The White House, under President Donald Trump, has authorized a significant change in United States policy. A new directive, signed on August 9, 2025, now permits the Pentagon to conduct military operations against certain Latin American drug cartels. This marks a profound departure from decades of established protocol. For years, the battle against these criminal syndicates was firmly in the hands of law enforcement agencies like the DEA. The military's role was largely limited to support, surveillance, and intelligence gathering. This new order fundamentally alters that dynamic, empowering soldiers to engage directly in a fight previously waged by police. This change reflects the administration's escalating view of the drug crisis as a direct threat to national security. The flow of synthetic opioids like fentanyl, which has caused immense devastation across the United States, is the primary catalyst for this aggressive stance. By authorizing military force, the government is signaling that traditional methods are no longer sufficient to combat the well-armed and incredibly wealthy transnational criminal organizations. The directive provides the legal and operational framework for the United States military to take action, potentially in international waters, and, more controversially, on foreign soil, to dismantle these powerful networks. The decision to militarize the anti-drug effort is arguably the most assertive step taken by the administration in its campaign against trafficking. It blurs the lines between military action and law enforcement, a move that carries substantial implications for both foreign policy and domestic law. The order was kept under wraps until revealed by veteran national security reporters, underscoring the sensitive nature of this strategic pivot. Using the might of the United States military against non-state criminal actors represents a forceful and potentially risky new chapter in the long and complex history of the war on drugs. This is not a decision made lightly. It is the culmination of years of frustration with the cartel's adaptability and resilience. These groups operate with a level of sophistication and violence that can overwhelm civilian police forces in the region. The administration's logic is that a conventional law enforcement problem has evolved into an unconventional warfare scenario. Therefore, a military response is not just an option, but a necessity to protect American lives from the poison being trafficked across the southern border and through other entry points. Central to this new military strategy is the formal designation of specific cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, or FTOs. This legal reclassification is the key that unlocks the Pentagon's authority to act. Without it, direct military strikes against criminal groups would be legally problematic. The administration has focused this designation on the organizations most deeply involved in the production and smuggling of fentanyl into the United States. This label fundamentally changes how the United States government can confront these groups, equating them with entities like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, and opening up a new set of powerful tools. By labeling cartels as terrorists, the United States can employ a wide range of national security measures previously reserved for counterterrorism. This includes freezing financial assets, imposing severe sanctions on leaders and their support networks, and prosecuting anyone providing material support to them. Secretary of State Marco Rubio argued that this designation is crucial for dismantling the cartel's vast financial empires, which are the lifeblood of their operations. It allows the United States to pursue not just the drugs, but also the money, the infrastructure, and the political protection that allows these groups to thrive. The administration has framed this move as an essential step to safeguard the nation. Officials contend that the cartel's actions, including mass violence, political assassinations, and the deliberate trafficking of a substance killing tens of thousands of Americans annually, are functionally equivalent to acts of terror. This FTO designation is presented as a more robust and decisive approach compared to past strategies, which are portrayed as having been inadequate. The policy is further bolstered by actions like the $50 million bounty on Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, who is accused of narco-terrorism and colluding with criminal factions. This reclassification is more than just semantics. It represents a paradigm shift. It allows for the use of intelligence assets and military capabilities that are far more extensive than what law enforcement agencies possess. The goal is to create a hostile environment for cartel operations on all fronts. This means targeting their supply chains, their chemical precursors, their transportation routes, and their leadership cells with the full force of the United States national security apparatus. It is a declaration that these groups are no longer just criminals. They are enemy combatants in a new kind of war. The reaction from south of the border was swift and unequivocal. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum firmly stated that her country would not permit any United States military operations on its territory. While acknowledging the shared security challenges and the importance of bilateral cooperation, President Sheinbaum drew a clear line against what she termed a foreign invasion. This firm stance underscores the immense political sensitivity of the issue, creating a potential diplomatic clash between two neighbors who are deeply interconnected in their fight against the powerful cartels that operate across their shared border. President Sheinbaum clarified that while her government was informed of the United States directive, it was not part of any bilateral agreement authorizing the deployment of American troops inside Mexico. She repeatedly emphasized the principles of cooperation and mutual respect, but insisted that Mexico's national sovereignty is non-negotiable. This public rejection highlights the inherent difficulties of the new United States policy, which aims to target transnational groups that are deeply embedded within another nation's territory. Mexico's position effectively limits the scope of potential United States military action to maritime interdictions or operations in other, more permissive countries. The Mexican government's posture reveals the complex balancing act it must perform. It must confront the cartels, which pose a grave threat to its own stability, while simultaneously defending its national pride and independence from perceived United States overreach. The history between the two nations is fraught with interventions, making any hint of American military presence on Mexican soil a politically explosive issue. This disagreement means that the United States cannot simply act unilaterally within Mexico, forcing it to rely on the cooperation of Mexican forces, which can be a slow and complicated process. This diplomatic friction illustrates a core challenge of the new strategy. The cartels that the United States wishes to target are most active within Mexico. Without the consent of the Mexican government, the most direct military options are off the table. This forces the United States to consider alternative approaches, such as enhancing intelligence sharing, providing better equipment to Mexican forces, and focusing on disrupting cartel operations at sea or in cyberspace. The success of the United States strategy will therefore depend not just on its military power, but on its ability to navigate this delicate diplomatic landscape with its most important partner. Despite the clear disagreement over military intervention, cooperation between the United States and Mexico in other areas remains strong and has yielded significant results. Recent joint law enforcement operations have led to a substantial decrease in fentanyl seizures along the border, a success story that both governments are, pretty eager to highlight. The U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, Ken Johnson, has publicly praised this collaboration, noting that the enhanced intelligence sharing and coordinated patrols have made both nations safer. This really proves that effective anti-cartel strategy relies on partnership and trust, not just on unilateral military threats. The new military directive should be seen as one component of a much broader, multi-agency American strategy. The White House has been clear that this is an all-of-government approach to protecting the homeland. This includes the Treasury Department levying financial sanctions to cripple cartel finances, the State Department engaging in diplomacy to secure cooperation from other regional partners, and the Department of Justice prosecuting captured traffickers. The military option is presented as a powerful new tool in the toolbox, to be used strategically alongside these other instruments of national power. The effectiveness of this comprehensive approach is reflected in recent border statistics, which show a record low in illegal crossings. This success is attributed to a combination of enhanced enforcement, diplomatic agreements, and targeted operations against human and drug smuggling networks. It suggests that a layered strategy, which combines robust law enforcement with international cooperation and targeted security measures, can produce tangible outcomes. While the military directive is the most dramatic element, Its ultimate success may depend on the strength of the less visible diplomatic and economic efforts that support it. This broader strategy acknowledges that the cartel problem cannot be solved by military force alone. These organizations are deeply integrated into the social and economic fabric of the regions they control. A lasting solution requires strengthening governance, reducing corruption, and providing alternative economic opportunities in affected communities. The United States is therefore continuing to invest in capacity-building programs for Mexican law enforcement and judicial institutions. The goal is to build a partnership where Mexico is increasingly capable of handling its own internal security challenges, making U.S. intervention less necessary. The decision to unleash the U.S. military against drug cartels charts a new and uncertain course for American foreign policy and the global war on drugs. For Americans, the policy promises a more decisive effort to stop the flow of deadly narcotics that have ravaged communities across the country. The administration hopes that by directly targeting the source with military precision, it can save American lives and reduce the immense social and economic costs of the opioid epidemic. However, this aggressive approach also carries the risk of escalating violence and drawing the U.S. into protracted, asymmetrical conflicts with well-funded and ruthless adversaries. Internationally, the policy risks straining relationships with key allies, particularly Mexico. President Sheinbaum's firm rejection of U.S. troops on her soil highlights the potential for diplomatic fallout. Respect for national sovereignty is a cornerstone of international law, and unilateral U.S. military action in Latin America could be perceived as a return to an era of interventionism, alienating regional partners whose cooperation is, frankly, vital. The long-term success of this policy will hinge on the ability of U.S. diplomats to manage these tensions and build coalitions, rather than acting alone and creating resentment. Furthermore, the very nature of the enemy presents a formidable challenge. Unlike traditional state armies, cartels are fluid, decentralized networks that are woven into civilian populations. Military strikes run the risk of causing collateral damage, which could fuel anti-American sentiment and serve as a powerful recruiting tool for the cartels themselves. Eradicating them is not as simple as defeating an army on a battlefield. It requires dismantling a complex criminal enterprise. This is a task that may prove to be far more complex and resource-intensive than conventional warfare, with no clear definition of victory. Ultimately, this bold move represents a high-stakes gamble. If successful, it could significantly disrupt the operations of the world's most dangerous criminal organizations and stem the tide of fentanyl. If it fails, it could lead to unintended consequences, including increased violence, diplomatic crises, and entanglement in a new forever war. The path forward requires a delicate balance between military force, diplomatic finesse, and sustained international cooperation. The world is now watching to see whether this dramatic shift in strategy will mark a turning point in the fight against drugs or a cautionary tale of military overreach.